G'day guys and welcome back to the Boundary Riders Podcast. We're at episode 4 now. We just finished round 2. Massive couple of games. We had Carlton beat Geelong and Geelong are now 0-2. We had a couple of other big games as well. We had Brisbane beating Melbourne with the lights going out, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We had Collingwood smash Port Adelaide. Probably the biggest upset of, I think, the decade. North Melbourne beating Fremantle in Perth. And yeah, Essendon as well as in the top 8 with 2 and zip. But we've got today my brother Jackpot Junkies over on Instagram. So missed out last week, but you're back in this week. What did you think of the round?
Oh, it's been a very good opening 2 rounds of footy. Like it's very, it's been very competitive. Besides a few teams, but
yeah, I think Hawthorn are in trouble.
Season. Yeah, well,
I think Hawthorn are in trouble.
Yes,
I think they're gonna. I think it's hard to pick the other 17 clubs, but I think now we can pick we've basically got Hawthorn locked down to bottom. Probably lucky to win a game.
Yeah, it's honestly very, very disappointing, and I don't get why so many other commentary people around the country aren't giving more stick for them, because they are playing VFL football at the moment.
Yeah, they're playing VFL. They're playing a VFL team, really. Yeah. I mean, if a Hawthorn player can't make that Hawthorn side, I think they're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, they played. I mean, obviously, this wasn't really what we were going to talk about, but the first game, the game that we're talking about here, Sydney versus Hawthorn, scores were 17-16, 118 to the Swans, and then 4-13, Hawthorn 37. Honestly, I watched this game because I'm a Swan supporter, and this game was over 10 minutes into the first quarter. This game was over, and Hawthorn, to be honest, this would have been a 100-point game if Sydney played in the last quarter. They kind of just dropped off, as a lot of teams would in this situation. Hawthorn only kicked 2 goals to 1 minute into the second quarter and didn't get a third goal until in the fourth quarter.
Mm.
Yeah, so
it didn't really matter by then. Like, I think it was Sydney were like, what? They just didn't want to get injuries.
Yeah, they didn't want to get injuries, but I think they rested Joel Amati because of his hamstring. I think another thing as well that a lot of people have been bringing up, I think it was Matthew Lloyd yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, but he said that Sydney could be in trouble of losing one of the Joel Amati or Logan McDonald if they decide to drop them this week for Lance Franklin.
Yeah, I think it's more that he doesn't got a year. I think he can be more damaging for personal. But he's only got this year, I think, buddy. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but he doesn't have long left. I think they'll all be fine.
What Sydney will do this week, from what my perspective was Joel Amati and Logan McDonald had brilliant games. They won't get dropped. Hayden McLean will get dropped because he didn't have that good a game against Hawthorn. I don't even think he kicked a goal. He played second ruck, so I think Joel Amati will go second ruck, play forward. Buddy Franklin will come back. No question. But the thing is, I think Matthew Lloyd, a lot of people would say, oh, you're stupid, all that sort of stuff, because Buddy Franklin's one of the best forwards to have ever played the game. And look, I agree, but I think Sydney were wrong to let him play one more year with them. I think they should have let him go. So if you did you watch the game?
Yeah, I watched it.
Logan McDonald and Joel Amati, even though it was against lesser defenders and a lesser team, they did look like a pretty good combination for the Swans.
They did.
Joel Amati can play that full forward more to role, like play the 50, and Logan McDonald can play between the arcs, really.
Yeah.
And then come back. I mean, look, it's not gonna. I don't think it will hurt those two, like in the long run, if Buddy Franklin plays this year. But if one of those two leave, I think Sydney. If one of them two leave, I think letting Buddy play this year is probably hurting them for the next 10.
Yeah.
Joel Amati suddenly came on, but if they lose Logan McDonald, because he's from Perth as well, and Fremantle need a forward. If I was Fremantle right now, I'd be chucking every single piece of salary cap left at Logan McDonald and say, come to the club for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's what I'd be doing.
Yeah. But what money do they Freo have now since they've chucked it all at Jackson? So it's going to be interesting what they do now.
And Fremantle have a shocking performance against North Melbourne. They lost this game, to be honest. The score should not have got that close. North Melbourne dominated this game.
And you can say whatever you want about how it finished, but it should never have been that close, and it should never have. They should have had a chance to win that. They should never deserve a chance to win it.
Fremantle should not be losing that game against a team like North Melbourne. And look, North Melbourne do have a I think better list than a lot of people thought looking into this season. Because Luke Davis-Uniacke's probably got 6 votes from the first 2 games. He's played brilliant football. Harry Shizu, I can't believe this guy, the kid. He's fucking dominated. But they shouldn't be losing that game. No. And I think Fremantle are in a lot of trouble. I think Luke Jackson may be one of the worst pickups of the season. That's not
a big call for 2 weeks in, but
I know. But what position is he going to play? They either got to get rid of Darcy, who I think's I don't know if he's a better ruckman in the long run, but Sean Darcy's a bigger, bulkier player.
Yeah, he's not going to be getting destroyed by like a Nankervis sort of type who is that bustling ruckman as well. So,
and the thing is, Fremantle can't drop Jackson. They can't do that. No. They're not going to drop him back to the waffle. So they need to find a spot for him. Maybe on the wing. I mean, he's a pretty good runner. Maybe something like that is like a Luke Jackson game, but he can't play forward. He's not a forward player. He's not a forward. He's a ruckman, and so is Sean Darcy. And they had to play Darcy up forward this week it didn't work. And it showed in the scoreboard. They lost.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you think that should have been paid deliberate, or do you think the game was over?
No, I think it was deliberate. It should have been a free kick.
I think so too. But Fremantle should not have been in that position.
I believe it should have been a free. But they shouldn't have deserved to have a chance to win that game because they didn't deserve to.
Yeah, I mean, in the last few minutes, I watched the last few minutes as well, and Jager O'Meara got 2 late goals. Like, if you're relying on Jager O'Meara to kick you goals, you got some problems up forward.
Yeah, and just amazing.
But I wanted to talk about, before we move into like the tips and that sort of stuff next week, obviously Friday night was pretty big. We had at the Gabba, the lights went out, and one of them caught on fire. Now, I don't know, I was live streaming this at the time, and I don't know if you saw that, but basically for 45 minutes I stood there saying, why are we still here? Get over it, finish the game. The game's 40 points in Brisbane's favour.
Yeah.
The game's over. Yeah. But they came back for the last 10 minutes, and Melbourne could have stolen it.
Yeah. For me, it wasn't a good look. The amount of injuries, I think Jared Berry actually got injured. I think he did his shoulder or something. I don't know how bad it seriously was, but he did come off in that 12 minutes that they played.
Did you hear as well that Melbourne were allowed to come out for 5 minutes?
Yeah, I don't know what. That's more of an AFL issue, I think. They were allowed. Maybe it was a mistake. It probably wasn't, but
yeah, I don't know how that happens, but I think a lot of the AFL was saying like the integrity of the game. That's why they have to get the game forward. How was it integral that a team that played terrible for 3.5 quarters, Melbourne, were even allowed to come back in that game? Yeah. They played terrible for 3.5 quarters, were down by 40 points, and then because Brisbane had stopped, they were like, okay, well, this is going to be the last 10 minutes. Melbourne aren't going to really try. We'll just lax on through, go to the next week. Melbourne actually started to show something, and they nearly won. They could have won this game if there was another 10 minutes to go.
Yeah.
So I don't think that was integral for the game, to be honest. I think if Brisbane should have that... I mean... The thing is, Brisbane as well lost pretty heavily in round 1 against Port. So they lost a lot of percentage in that game too. So if that goes up to... We're expecting that Brisbane probably make top 4 this year. I mean, I don't think the 4 is going to be like what it is now. So I think that could cost them a position higher, depending on percentage.
I
think 30 points that they could have had. And Melbourne's score was pretty low, so it would have been a pretty significant percentage boost for Brisbane.
Well, I think they were saying they lost... probably 15+% in that game. I think it was probably more likely.
Well, it was 81 to 41, I think it was. So it would have been 200, nearly 200%.
Yeah.
And then it was ruled all the way down to 11-point win.
Yeah.
So I think that's not integral for the game.
No,
but
it wasn't the examination of the entire game. Because if you just watch the last quarter, you think why wasn't Melbourne in?
If you look at the scoreboard, you're like, well, it was a pretty close game.
Yeah,
but you watch the first 3.5 quarters, Brisbane probably should have been in front by more.
Yeah,
they should have been, but yeah, I think final answer. I think the game shouldn't have gone forward. I think the rules should be changed now to. I think some commentators were saying they should add a similar feature to like cricket, how they have the Duck Lewis. I don't know if it would be exactly the same, but
yeah, it's very hard to predict how that would work. But like the example was, it should have been 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, after half time, that's it, and they just waited 30 minutes.
I think if they have that rule, it should be 3/4 time. To be honest, unless it's like an absolute blowout, then maybe 3/4 time. But for the point that they were like, they have to get this game going forward, it's like, it was 10 minutes to go, 40 points. Melbourne, we're not going to catch back unless if something like this happened.
Yeah. The other element was the betting side of it, because it was 40 points, the line normally is that it's 1 to 39 and 40 plus. And they're saying, well, it was at 40 plus. You can't say that it wasn't going to be 40 plus in the end. So that was another element, but I don't think it mattered.
I don't know if the AFL would have been looking at the betting sites on their decision.
You would hope they wouldn't.
Do you think they really did?
No, I don't know, but like some people, I think Jonathan Brown was saying on Friday night.
Yeah, he did mention that. I saw that. He was mentioning something like, it's a 40-point line at the moment.
Yeah, but I love what happened I think it was yesterday. No, yeah, Monday, I think it was. Monday on the show on Foxtel. He was saying, and he started bagging it. They can't believe that they let this happen, like let them play. It was like, you said 4 days ago on Friday that it should keep going. It's like you can't really have it both ways just because it was your team that nearly got done in the end.
Yeah,
it's
true.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit of bias towards Melbourne, Brisbane in the end. But now we get to what we did last week was we did the votes. So every single week over on Instagram, I post the final scores of each game, and then I gave a little voting thing down the bottom. If you guys have checked it out, make sure to go check out Boundary Riders over on Instagram. But if you look through the games, we had Carlton versus Geelong in round 1. Carlton really dominated this game throughout the whole thing. And 3 votes, I went Blake Acres. I think he was probably the best player outside of the 2 forwards. The 2 forwards were Jeremy Cameron and Charlie Curnow. I think he had most impact on the wing and probably definitely his best game for Carlton so far, obviously out of the 2. So I gave him the 1 vote. I gave Jeremy Cameron the 2 votes only because they lost. I know you're shaking your head and you told me this before. You think Jeremy Cameron should have got the 3 votes. The only reason why I gave Charlie Curnow the 3 votes was because Carlton won. So he won them the game.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that. Because Cameron
had 25 touches.
Had 25 disposals, 6 goals. He carried him on his back, and he won him the game, but he didn't. He had 1 foot on the 4 points, and none of his team came with him.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, next game we had Brisbane versus Melbourne, as we mentioned before. Brisbane won in the end by 11 points. The 1 vote I gave to Clayton Oliver. I know he was probably one of the highest ranked players on the ground, but if you watch this game, he got a lot of those ranked points in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, he did.
So I only gave Oliver the 1 vote because he got him back into this game after 10 minutes, but for the first 3.5 quarters, I felt like he was pretty unimpactful. The 2 votes I gave to Lachie Neale. He had a pretty good game in the midfield, pretty Lachie Neale sort of game. And then the 3 votes I gave to probably the most influential player on the ground was Dane Zorko. I thought he was probably their best player for Brisbane, and I think it showed that they desperately needed him back after the poor game against Port Adelaide.
Yeah, I didn't expect it from a veteran to do it straight from injury, but he played pretty well. Disagreeing on the Ashcroft since he had 31 disposals in the Rising Star nomination week, but
no, I felt like
guess he needs to earn the right to
get ducking their heads. If you watch the game, you get the duck in his head. I didn't like that look. Anyway, we get to Collingwood Port Adelaide. This is a game you probably watched it.
No, I watched it all the way to the end, and it was really, really poor by Port Adelaide. But it was typical of Port Adelaide.
One thing I will say though is I didn't expect Collingwood to be looking this good in the first couple of rounds. I've had people on my coming up, I posted a TikTok or whatever about my ladder predictions, and then people are watching them this week, 2 rounds in, and they're like, "Oh, you thought Collingwood were gonna do shit?" It's like, yeah, because I did this before the season started, bro.
It would be all different now.
Yeah, exactly. For now, it would be. I'll probably pick Collingwood top 4. Yeah. But anyway, in this game, I think when the game was there to be won, this was really when because in the second half, it was kind of just a pretty lackluster game, to be honest.
It was already over.
Yeah. But when the game was there to be won, I think Tom Mitchell was probably one of their better players in the team. Definitely best game so far that he's played. I gave him the 1 vote. Nick Dacos just keeps on hitting strength to strength. If people are talking about a Brownlow for him, I think it's probably a year too early. But Nick Dacos had a brilliant game. And then the 3 votes I gave to Darcy Cameron. He had a brilliant game in the ruck. Dominated. He really helped out Tom Mitchell and Nick Dacos and all those other midfielders getting easy touches. And I think he just dominated. So and he took a lot of marks around the ground too.
Yeah, he dominated and showed the exact reason of what Lystead isn't for Port Adelaide.
Yeah.
He's a mobile ruckman who can move the ball.
Yeah. I think a lot of ruckmen now, you have to be mobile, you have to be able to get around the ground. And I think that's going to be interesting for Melbourne as well, because Brodie Grundy really didn't play that sole ruck role until... I mean, he's been training all summer to be a second ruck. Yeah. And now he played the game against Brisbane, and he wasn't that good until those last 10 minutes. Brodie Grundy, without Max Gawn. So Melbourne will be able to hit without him for at least, I think, 4 to 6, I think it was.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah, so it's only an MCL, so he's very lucky not to get an ACL injury. But next game we get up to the Crows and Richmond. Richmond dominated this game for about two and a half quarters. The Crows did come back in the third quarter and probably midway through the fourth, but I think that game against the Giants the week before really took it out of them.
Yeah. I think more just that they couldn't kick straight. It's been the problem last week against the Giants, and it was the problem.
If they kick straight, they win this game. I think they probably take... I don't know if they win this game, but it's definitely a lot closer. I mean, if you look at the scores, it was 10-16 to the Crows to Richmond kicking 17 goals 6.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a difference. They had more scoring shots than Richmond, and they lost by 5 goals. So it makes a difference, and I think they need to work on their kicking, especially this week coming up with the showdown. So if they lose that because of goal kicking, it won't. It's one thing losing against Richmond, but losing against your arch rivals is not very good, especially if it's on point scores.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the 3 votes, I know you disagreed with me on this, but I gave 1 vote to Tim Taranto. I think he was probably their second best midfielder behind Jacob Hopper, who I gave the 2 votes to.
Yeah.
I gave Rory Laird the 3 votes because I feel like he was the best player on the ground. He had 39 touches. He had a brilliant game for the Crows. And considering the week before he played so poorly, I think he backed it up. And
yeah, I'm surprised looking at the stats that Hopper only had 23. I thought he was more influential than 23 in that first half, in my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah, I gave Rory Laird the 3 votes in that game. Next one, we got up to what my certainty pick was in this round, which was Bulldogs versus St Kilda. I picked the Bulldogs to win this game, and other than the 10 minutes that they showed in the second quarter, they kicked one goal for the rest of the game.
They were hopeless. They were absolutely hopeless. They were.
And I got a hot take about the Bulldogs later in the podcast, but yeah, I think they played woeful footy. They looked uninspired. They played terrible in the midfield. St Kilda's midfield played well, but the Bulldogs list on paper should be competing for a premiership, and they got beaten by 50 points against St Kilda, and they got beaten by about 50 points against Melbourne the week before. I think they're in trouble.
The amount of times that I was watching that game, and they literally, St Kilda from the back 50, just kick mark all the time, all the way to the 50. It happened 4 times, I reckon, in the third quarter.
Yeah,
he ran down and kicked the score.
Yeah.
They didn't want to defend.
Yeah, I think that's been the Bulldogs' issue for a very long time too. And losing Dunkley as well.
Yeah,
I think that's a bigger loss than a lot of people would have thought, because he was one of their defensive midfielders, and now they've only got really probably Liberatore, but even then he's getting older now though too.
He did have 8 tackles and the only one that was doing more defensive stuff, but
yeah, you can't. McRae isn't going to be running backwards. They've got Bontempelli, which really isn't the most defensive midfielder. And then their midfield now, I think... Well, Adam Treloar was out. He's probably a better one. But I don't think any injury that the Bulldogs had, it doesn't excuse a 50-point loss against the Saints.
No. With their injury list, it doesn't...
Yeah, the Saints' injury list is fucking huge, and they lose against the Bulldogs by... They beat the Bulldogs by 50 points. That's not AFL standard. But nonetheless, the 3 votes, I gave Rowan Marshall the 1 vote. I think he played brilliant in the ruck. He locked down Tim English quite well. I think he won the ruck battle. 2 votes I gave to Jack Sinclair, definitely continuing on his form that he had last year. And I gave the 3 votes to Jack Steele. Now, he had an injury throughout this game, and he'll be out for a month now, I think, for the Saints.
Yeah.
And he was able to have a great performance for the Saints, and that just proves how poor the Bulldogs played, that a guy was injured in the midfield and still got, I think, the 3 votes.
Yeah, well, it was amazing how when he came on, you could literally... His arm was down. He couldn't move the... Yeah. It looked like it was dislocated or something, and he just came out and he
played great footy that he usually does.
Yeah, good.
So I think it's good to see that Jack Steele... it's tough to see another injury out of St Kilda, but being 2-0, and playing Essendon this week, I think they've got a big chance going not 3-0.
And in their 150th anniversary game as well this week.
Probably want to win that game.
Yeah.
Alright, next up we get to probably the biggest upset of the century.
My certainty pick as well.
Yeah, so this is who Jack picked for the certainty pick. He picked Fremantle to pick North Melbourne, which I think everyone would have picked if they had a certainty pick.
Oh, no, yeah.
And North Melbourne played... I didn't watch a lot of this game because I was watching the St Kilda North Bulldogs game, but I did watch the highlights of this game, and I think Luke Davies-Uniacke could be a Brownlow Smoky this season.
They just need to win enough games, in my opinion, for that to happen. But yeah, he started in that game.
He's got 6 votes probably off the bank.
Yeah,
like straight
because you wouldn't think Sheasel... Yes, he played well last week as well, but just because of they don't normally notice players.
They don't usually pick young players for 3 votes early on. So Fremantle woeful up forward. We just talked about Luke Jackson before. We're not going to go into that again, but Tabner was the one who was subbed out in that game.
He was horrible.
Yeah.
Listening to the commentary, they were ripping into him, really.
Yeah.
A bit, so... Yeah,
I mean, they were relying on Fife to be kicking 50 goals this year. He was out in this game.
He was laid out.
He was laid out, so I don't know if they can rely on that. They can't rely on Jackson kicking 30, 40 goals. They can't... I don't know if they can rely on Tabner, so...
Yeah.
They play the derby this week. It'd be interesting if they can somehow win that game, but they could be 9-3 at the end of round 3, and a team that a lot of people would have been thinking the team that they didn't really know was going to happen to them could be right down the bottom from a team that had a lot of talent. I mean, they got probably one of the best defenses in the competition. I think they're in big trouble, Freo. And in the 3 votes, I did give Andy Brayshaw 1 vote. I think he is still their best player by far, and every single week he goes out there and will fly the flag for Fremantle.
Yeah.
So I did give him the 1 vote. The 2 votes I gave to Harry Sheasel. I don't think I've ever seen the first 2 games of your career be so impactful for North Melbourne.
He's the second person ever to have 30 plus 2 weeks in a row, and he debuted 2 games. The other one was Michael Barlow.
So I mean, he's got some. I don't know if Michael Barlow was that good of a... I mean, he had a good start of his career. Then he got injury prone. So, I mean, let's hope that doesn't happen to him. But he's had a very good start, Harry Sheasel. And then the 3 votes I gave to Davies-Uniacke. That goal that he kicked late in the last quarter, sealed the game. I mean, if it wasn't for Fremantle, if it wasn't for Jager O'Meara kicking them back into it in the last few minutes, he won the game for them really out of the middle. And yeah, I think Fremantle are in a lot of trouble going this week in the derby.
Horrible. They were.
Alright, this will be a pretty quick one. Sydney versus Hawthorn. You guys heard earlier, Hawthorn are in a lot of trouble this season. They're lining up a VFL side. I think Sam Mitchell and the list management of Hawthorn has been woeful. You can say, and they did mention this in the commentary on Sunday, you need to have some sort of experience in the lineup to get a rebuild done. And the most experienced player they have is Blake Hardwick, Luke Bruce, James Sicily. Is that their most...
Yeah,
They also mentioned that no Hawthorn player, I think, playing other than Luke Bruce was over 30. I'm pretty sure they mentioned that.
Yeah, it was either that or over 200 games. He was the only one to 200 games that was.
But they've... And as well, like, these guys need to still know how to win. Or learn how to win. But they're not going to win many this season. No. If at all.
I struggle to see how they win any. They might play... because
they may knock off a team later in the season, but I don't think that's going to make much of a difference to... For the 3 votes, I gave 1 vote to Errol Goulden. I think he played very well in the midfield. 2 votes I gave to Logan McDonald with his 5 goals. He played brilliantly, and that's why we mentioned earlier, I think that Buddy Franklin went on a year too long at the Swans. And the 3 votes I gave to captain Callum Mills. He played brilliant football. Looks like last week he was a little bit off the mark, in my opinion, for the Swans. I think Chad Warner was more the chief in the midfield for the Swans. So I think he definitely backed it up this week, Callum Mills. But yeah, next game we get to Essendon versus Gold Coast. I don't think anyone would have seen Essendon be 2-0. They also lost Sam Wiedemann before the game too, so they didn't have that much of a forward line. But Essendon backed it up again, led by the recruit of the year at this stage in Will Setterfield. He's had a brilliant start for Essendon colours, and probably one of the big, he was one of those players as well that came early on from the GWS. So there was always talk that he was a talent. He never really been able to flourish at Carlton because they obviously had a lot of midfielders, but now he's playing really well for Essendon. And in this game, I gave Dylan Shield the 1 vote. He played quite well. I didn't watch a lot of this game, but from what I saw, he played pretty well in the midfield. I think it's a couple of goals as well, so kicking goals as a midfielder is always a big plus. Cole Langford, I gave the 2 votes. I think he kicked 4 goals in the end.
No, yeah, 5.
5 goals in the end, so I think that's fair enough to get him the 2 votes. Almost gave him 3, but I feel like Will Setterfield again. He had a brilliant game, and I think that he's going to maybe pack a couple of votes early in the season.
Yeah.
I think...
And he was a bit...
What did he...
Yeah, he was very contested as well. He had 9 tackles in the game as well. So he did show the defensive element that they have been lacking, Essendon, in the midfield. So
yeah, I think that's something that they have been lacking a lot with Merritt and Shield and Parrish and stuff. A lot of them aren't really the defensive pressure midfielders. It's like they're not a two-way runner like a Tuke Miller. So, and I think like the Gold Coast are in a bit of trouble too because they got Geelong next week. I can't see them winning that game. They could be 0-3, and Stuart Dew could lose it after signing him for 2 more years. Could they fire him in a couple of weeks if they can't win a game?
Yeah, I think him and
Ken Hinkley are probably the most under pressure at the moment.
Yeah, well, bloody, I think Luke Beveridge is close to that.
Yeah, true.
There too.
Them 3 are very big trouble. In the final game, we get to West Coast versus GWS. West Coast, their 2nd win at home in 2 years.
It's not... doesn't...
And they beat the team like the Giants. That I think Toby Green mentioned midweek that was the hardest game against the Crows the week before these ever had to play in because of how much the conditions were in against the Crows. So the Giants probably a bit underdone. And I think it probably showed in the end the scoreline letting 14 goals go through for West Coast. That's one of the first times they've done that in a while. West Coast played well, and I'll give them that. And Jake Waterman had a breakout game. I don't think a lot of people would have seen that coming, but considering he did better than Jack Darling and Oscar Allen, I think it's good for him. I don't know how much he can back that up, though. So, with the 1 vote, I gave to Stephen Cornelio. He played really well in the midfield for the GWS, and he's probably one of the few who didn't look like he had too many concerns from the week before. 2 votes I gave to their best midfielder, Tim Kelly. I didn't give him 3 votes because I feel like nowadays, if you're going to be playing midfield, you have to tackle, and he continues to not play the defensive side of the game. But he did have a good impact in this game, but he didn't even have a tackle. And for a game of football, when surely you have to tackle in the midfield. You have to have 1 tackle at least. If you don't have a tackle, you can't be a Class A midfielder, and I don't think you can get 3 votes in a game, in my opinion. If you can't tackle once, I feel like that's as a midfielder.
It's a bit selfish, in my opinion, that you can't do your job as defensively to.
I don't know how you don't have a tackle in the midfield. Yeah. I mean, every single time. How many times do they just ball it up and then it just hits the ground for second stoppage?
Yeah.
How many times does that happen in a game? How do you not have a tackle as a midfielder? But anyway, the 3 votes I did give to Jake Waterman. I feel like he had a brilliant game and he kicked the 4 goals for the West Coast Eagles. Probably won it for him, so that's why I gave him the 3 votes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's rounded off the votes for so far this week. We're doing that every week, and like I said last episode, I think I'll be doing like a live stream at the end of the year, doing like a live count or something. You know, like maybe not Andrew Dimitri like saying the votes every single 3 seconds, but I think I'll do it a little bit quicker than that. But we're into round 3 now. Forget around round 2, we're out to round 3, and we'll get to our tips. So this week we start off with the Bulldogs and Brisbane. Both teams probably needing a win. I think the Brisbane Lions, yes, they won last week, but now I think they need to back it up. Definitely petered off in those last 10 minutes, and I think they need to come out early in this game and just show that they're still, they deserve to win that game last week. They deserve to win. They deserve the 4-quarter performance, and they should have won by more than 11 points. I've personally tipped Brisbane to beat the Bulldogs in this game. I think the Bulldogs are going to go 0-3, and I think they're going to be in deep trouble. Have you tipped?
Yeah, I've done Brisbane. The Bulldogs just don't have any defensive attributes in their team. I think they have to shut
Darcy back there now. I think you can't have 3 they had last week they had 3 forwards. They took out Lob and they still couldn't have any sort of defensive pressure up forward.
Well, I don't get why they decided to chuck Bruce back and Darcy forward.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, if you're going to recruit Lob, which I don't know really, they didn't really have to. They had to recruit in the defence last year. They didn't do it. So, I mean, I think they've still got one of the lists in the comp that should be competing for premiership, honestly. They got one of the best midfield on paper, one of the best forward lines on paper.
Yeah.
I think they should be competing for a premiership, but I feel like, I think they're going to be 9-3. The one thing is as well, because it's not at the MCG today, I give Brisbane a better chance as well.
Yeah, it's better.
If it was the MCG, I feel like Brisbane would be a bit of a trouble, but in Marvel, under the roof, they should be able to run riot and win that game. Round 2, this will be game of the week, so we'll be live streaming this on the channel. Collingwood versus Richmond. This one's going to be a huge game. Both teams undefeated. Collingwood really proving a lot of people wrong, including me and you.
Yeah.
I am shocked at how Collingwood have actually backed this up, and I think I did say when I did my seasonal predictions that Collingwood can't win those games up close anymore. Well, I was right about that. They've just gone to demolish. They've gone to demolish Port Adelaide, and they came from behind against Geelong and really took them to the sword too. And they've got one of the best forward lines in the comp in terms of scores.
Yeah, 220 pluses in a row. It's been bloody interesting to see.
They've got to back it up this week though, because Geelong. Richmond's probably their biggest test so far. I know they obviously played Geelong in round 1, but I feel like Geelong are off the pace and they've been off the pace so far.
Yeah,
I think this is their biggest test to date, but I'm still picking Collingwood. I feel like Collingwood are definitely playing probably the best team at the moment, because they beat Geelong, who are definitely on their worst day are still one of the better top 6 teams in the comp, and Port Adelaide, who the week before did play brilliantly, but I still think they're better than who Sydney have played, which I think are the 2 teams at the moment who are the best teams so far, Sydney and Collingwood. I'm picking Collingwood to win this one, probably by 20 points or something.
Yeah, it'll be a close game. It always seems to be between the 2 sides, but Collingwood should win based on their recent form. It just seems like their motto is that if we kick 100, if the opposition's going to kick 110, we're going to kick 120. We're going to kick more score than you, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, but this is obviously as well, because it is game of the week. You've got your multi for this game.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the multi. If you guys want to follow, you do a multi for every game. Is that right?
Yeah, we did well last week. Should have got 4 of the 9 same goal multis. Fucking Essendon.
Yeah, because of you. What was it? The one.
Yeah, I posted on my Instagram page of the last kick of the game that cost me my multi in the Essendon game. Wasn't good. Not happy about it. Still not.
But alright, so if you want to follow every single game's multi, make sure to check out Jackpot Junkies over on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yep. But here we go. We'll just be doing one for the podcast. So this is the match of the round: Collingwood versus Richmond. So
I've went over 170 points because, well, like we just said, that Collingwood just seem to keep scoring. They just can't stop.
Yeah.
I've went Tom Lynch for 2 goals, just because, well, last time he played Collingwood, he kicked 6, and also in the 2 games so far this season, Hawkins and Cameron have both kicked 2 goals, and Dixon kicked 3. So the big boys that are playing against Collingwood are kicking goals. Nick Dacos, I've went for 30. So itself, I don't think after Port's performance of tagging him, I think they'll leave him alone. Yeah, Richmond don't tag, but he has had 30 plus in both of the games so far this season. I went Jack Crisp for 20 plus. He did kick the last 2 games against Richmond. He got 30 and 33, but this season so far he's only got 20s. So I think he's safe at 20. And I've also went Shea Bolton for 15. Because he's done that both times this season, and he just seems to be able to find the football. That if he's not kicking goals, he's getting disposals. So that's my multi for this week.
Alright, cool.
And also, always gamble responsibly.
As always, gamble responsibly. We'll have that on the screen as well on the side, so you guys can see it as well. But then we get into our next game. Well, who would have thought North Melbourne would be going for a 3-0 going into round 3? And they will be. They're playing Hawthorn. I put North Melbourne to finish bottom this year, and I don't know why I would do that thinking now. Like, obviously my season prediction when I made it at the start of the year was going to be wrong, but North Melbourne are proving that they've got a midfield to work around for the next 10 years.
And they've got a forward line that's got to...
They've got a forward line, and now, that's the thing as well. If a club's looking now to go to a different... Like, let's say a forward's looking to go back to Victoria... Are you going to be picking North Melbourne now with Alistair Clarkson at the helm, or Hawthorn, who's kicking you a ball forward? Like from the midfield. Like if you're leading up to Luke Davies-Uniacke, Jai Simpkin in the midfield, or are you leading up to James Worpel and
Will Day.
Will Day is your midfielders. I'm picking North Melbourne for the next 10 years, and I'm picking North Melbourne in this game as well.
Yeah, I think North Melbourne, and it is at Tasmania, but it's also their home as well, so it does not matter.
Yeah,
North Melbourne will win. They'll be 3-0, and they won't be top, but they'll be close to it.
They'll be equal top on wins, and that will be interesting going into the next couple of games. It'll be interesting how they do perform though, Hawthorn, because this is their first game. Sam Mitchell playing against Alistair Clarkson. Yeah. I'll be interested to see how the reception is received for because coaches usually see each other before the game. I'll be interested to see how that goes out. That's probably the most interesting part of this game because I feel like this could be a bit of a blowout for North. Yeah. All right. Next game we've got the Carlton versus the Giants. Carlton are still undefeated. The Giants, they did win round 1. They didn't look that good round 2 against West Coast. Yeah. So in this game, I'm going to be picking Carlton to beat the Giants. Yes, it's at Giants Stadium, and it is a later game, so I don't think they'll have too many. It won't have too many weather issues. The problem is though the Giants, they came off a hard game against the Crows and they lost to West Coast. Now it's a 6-day break for them when they come back. Carlton are getting an 8-day break. I feel like 9-day break actually because they put on Thursday. So so they'll get a 9-day break. Carlton will be the fresher of the two teams. I can't really see the Giants winning this game.
Yeah, I pretty much think that if you can stop Toby Green, you stop the Giants at the moment, and I think their defence, the Carlton defence will beat them. So
they got enough.
He won't do much, and neither will the Giants. So Carlton win easily.
Next game, we get the 150th anniversary for St Kilda up against Essendon Saturday night. This is a big game for both teams, both undefeated at the moment. Who would have seen that coming? But St Kilda and Essendon, I think this game's probably big. It's definitely big for both clubs. If Essendon win this game, they've actually beaten a team that's actually worthy. I mean, they beat Hawthorn in round 1, who cares? And they beat the Gold Coast in round 2, who don't look that good this season. This would be a big win for them. If St Kilda win this, I think that they should win this game, I think, if anything. I think they're definitely favourites in this game. Yes, they lose Jack Steele to injury, but I feel like if they are going to be competing for a top 8 spot, which, I mean, they've started off well enough, they can continue. They've got Ross Lyon at the helm. I have picked St Kilda in this game, so I think if St Kilda are willing to push for, maybe not a finals, but if they can push to maybe an 8th spot, they should be winning this game.
Yeah, I think St Kilda again. It's very interesting that this is the MCG, St Kilda home game. They don't normally play there as their home games, but so that will be interesting.
Yeah, because St Kilda's first 2 games have been under the roof, haven't they?
Yeah, so it'll be interesting, but
they will have to back this up at the MCG. But Essendon probably are better under the roof, but they did win in round 1 against... So they've had a little bit more experience there so far this season. I just think St Kilda in the midfield... the thing is, it's going to be hard. I think if St Kilda can get it up forward enough, they'll win this game because Essendon's defence is probably their weakness. So.
Yeah, and the pressure that the St Kilda midfield have brought so far this season... It's going to be interesting to show against the Essendon, who aren't really defensive.
Yeah.
That we saw, so going to be interesting. But I think St Kilda.
Yeah, I'll go St Kilda as well. So after that, we have the showdown, Port Adelaide versus Adelaide, and this is going to be your certainty pick for this week because you got to pick second. Yeah,
I have said I'd never do Port Adelaide for a certainty pick, but I think it's safe to pick Port against the Crows. I'm probably going to be sorry about this and it'll probably cost me, but I'm pretty sure Port Adelaide should beat Crows.
I've tipped the Crows this week, so I don't know because I think the Crow. I just don't know if Port play as poorly as they did last week in the midfield, the Crows can get a good score in their forward line. They got 26 scoring shots last week against Richmond, who I think have a better midfield than Port Adelaide at the moment. So I think if Port Adelaide come with that sort of performance again, I think the Crows can win their first game of the season. But if Port bring out the performance that they brought against Brisbane, I think Port will win this game easy.
Yeah. And
whoever wins the midfield battle will win this game, I think.
Yeah. Well, you think Jordan Butts will come back for the Crows because, that was just a stupid thing.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Matty Nicks was doing. I don't know against Lynch, Rewalt, and Samson Ryan. Yes, he wasn't much, but he was a tall guy.
He kicked 3 goals.
Yeah. Well, so he's going to do something. It just seemed like the most stupidest.
Yeah. Now with Port going with Marshall, Dixon. I don't know if Georgiades is going to play up there again. Yeah, I think they should play him down back this week.
Yeah, I'm saying that. I don't know if that'll happen. I think what will happen is that he'll get dropped and he'll play the Sandful back down the back, and
see what happens.
They'll bring Finlayson back in. I reckon that's what Port Adelaide will do.
All right, so you've gone Port. I've gone Crows.
Certainty pick.
Yeah, that's your certainty pick too. So as we've seen, if you guys don't know, we've been doing certainty picks every single week. We have like these challenges. If you get it wrong, then you have to complete them. Last week you would have seen I had to eat 2 wheat bix dry. Gross, horrible. This week my brother will be having to do the same. So at the end of these tipping, guys, we're going to go to that, and he'll have to get his he'll have to eat some wheat bix dry.
I can't wait.
Horrible. Now I'll have to wax my leg because that's my punishment because I got my certainty pick wrong as well. But I don't have any at the moment, so I'll do that next week. Maybe 2 things wrong in a row if I get this certainty pick wrong, but surely I don't because my certainty pick is the next game, Gold Coast versus Geelong. I've picked Geelong to beat the Gold Coast. Surely Geelong don't go down in 3. Surely.
You wouldn't think, and well, you haven't gone the Bulldogs like you did the last 2 weeks, so surely Geelong will respond. But if they go none in 3,
I think they're in trouble.
They're in trouble to make finals if they go
they've
none
lost,
in 3.
Yeah, they've lost 2 games against teams that could be a premiership favourite at this stage in Collingwood.
Yeah.
And Carlton, who are challenging for the top 8 at least, and they played well in the weekend. So I think Geelong are pretty much a certainty to pick this game.
Yeah,
because I've got my first 2 wrong. So yeah, I'm picking Geelong over the Gold Coast.
Yeah, I've went Geelong. They can't lose 3 in a row. But but on the other side, if the Suns go none in 3, the pressure on Stewie Jew will be huge.
Yeah, I feel like they're in big trouble, the Suns, because they put all their eggs in the Stuart Jew basket. Pretty midway through last year, really. And then since then, they have hardly won a game. I think they didn't have a very good end to the end last season, and the start of this season has been woeful. And yeah, I think they've got a pretty good list, the Gold Coast. I think they're still missing out on that top A-grade player, like a 3rd or 4th A-grade player. They've only got Tuke Miller, Noah Anderson, and maybe Ben King, but Ben King's still underdone.
Yeah.
So I think they're missing out on those couple of 8. I think that's the problem with the Gold Coast, but they can't do much about that in round 3, so I think they're going to go none in 3, and I think Stuart Jew's pressure's going to mount on him. Next game's probably one of the games of the round as well, Melbourne versus Sydney. Melbourne are 1-1, but I think they're still going to be challenging for deep in finals this year, and the Swans, who have had 2 pretty easy wins, so this will be their biggest test so far. Melbourne, I think, Kasai Pickett's still out, so that's a big loss for them. Sydney will get Buddy Franklin back. I don't know if that's a good thing, to be honest. I think Sydney look very good up forward when they don't have Buddy Franklin to go to 90% of the time. I can't say it's a bad thing that he's back because I think he's still good enough to be in the Swans forward line, obviously. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that he was out. And last year, Sydney played Melbourne midway through the year without Buddy Franklin, and they won that game. And then in the finals last year, Buddy Franklin played against Melbourne in the qualifying final, but I don't think he even kicked a goal.
No,
Sydney,
he didn't play that well, I don't think.
No, it was one of his couple of final series that he played pretty woefully. So I don't know if Stephen May comes back this week. He was last week, but then laid out. So if Stephen May's back to play Buddy, I think that could be probably a good thing for the Swans because then Logan McDonald doesn't have to take him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm picking Melbourne in this game. I know I'm a Swans supporter in saying that, but I feel like the Swans, they haven't had a hard game yet, so I want to see how they go. I'm going to be picking Melbourne because they have had, they had who did they play in round 1?
Bulldogs.
They've had the Bulldogs.
So
they flogged the Bulldogs. They look good against the Bulldogs, and they had Brisbane last week, which was their challenge. So I think they want to be coming back this week, wanting to play some hard footy. I think they will beat the Swans.
Yeah, I think Melbourne do. They've got the list on paper. They've had a couple of harder games, obviously against the Brisbane last week. You got Sydney who haven't come against anyone really. They haven't come against a hard team yet. So
I think the thing as well is Ben Brown's looked good so far this season, and the Swans struggle with a really tall forward. So I think if Ben Brown can get on top early in this game, I think Sydney will struggle to keep him under the big score.
Yeah, should be.
Yeah, it'd be a good game though, I think. This could be a game of the round. Yeah. But finally we get to the derby. This is probably one of the biggest derbies we've seen in a couple of years.
Yeah, it would be. West
Coast, 1-1 now. Fremantle have not won a game. Fremantle, on paper, should win this game easily. But they've not played good footy so far.
No, they they look horrible going forward, and yeah,
their defence has held them from being flogged, I think.
Yeah, they're the
Brendan Cox,
kept
Liam Ryan, Hayden Young. Fremantle should win this game on paper, but I'm going to tip Fremantle because on paper they should win this game, and I feel like at this point they have to show something. Like, they have to show some pride and go out and win this game if they want to make finals this year. I mean, they potentially were supposed to be looking at like going up. Like, no one really expected them to go up. But internally, they should have been thinking, all right, we made top 6 last season. We should be pushing for top 4.
Yeah.
They should be pushing for top 4. In my opinion, they should be. That'd be a pass mark for Fremantle. And they need to start by winning this game. I'm going to pick Fremantle purely on the fact that, on paper, they should be winning this game. They have more talent. They have West Coast forward line. I don't think is good enough to kick a good enough score against Fremantle. But the problem is, if they can't kick enough here, Fremantle, they'll lose this game.
Yeah. I think it'll be a really close game. I think you're going to get a pretty, really contested, high-pressure game, and West Coast are going to win this. I think, what I've seen the first 2 weeks from Freo, they can't kick a score. They can't kick a winning score. And the elements of the game, of the Eagles game against the Giants, is that they're going to move the football. And they're going to move it through the corridor. Yeah, they're going to shock a few teams, the Eagles, and they'll get the win in the Derby.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, that's all our tips for this week.
Hey guys, Jackpot here. So, I've got to do the punishment of the certainty pick of Fremantle over North Melbourne, which is bullshit because they didn't deserve to bloody lose. I'm not going to go into that. But, for your information, the 2... Weet-Bix are right here, so I guess I have to eat them, don't I? Yeah, this is horrible. Any Fremantle players watching this? Thanks a lot. It's really bad. Yeah. This is so bad. Bloody Fremantle. Alright, that's one. One to go. Even softening it doesn't make it any better. No, that's horrible. Bloody Fremantle. Trust me, if anyone's picked North Melbourne, bloody hell, nice pick for you. Because hardly anyone would have picked that. And any poor players, any of the watching this is why we need you to win this week. Just for me. Got one. Gonna do it in one bite because I can't keep doing this. It's so bad. Oh. Alright. It's all done. We're going for Port this week because they're gonna win. They're gonna win the showdown. Alright. Thanks, guys.
So, last few weeks, last week I only got 4 out of 9. I've really not been doing good in the tipping so far this year. But in round 1, I had a really good week for AFL Fantasy. However, this week I didn't do that well. I only got, what was it in the end? So AFL Fantasy this week, I only got 1,971, which, I mean, isn't a terrible score for round 2, but it's not as good as last week. Last week I got 2,200. Sorry, round 1 I got 2,200. And probably the problem was my trades were shit, really. I got rid of Darcy. I got Darcy last week for Darcy Cameron, who had a brilliant game, as we said, for Collingwood. And I got rid of Andy McGrath for Will Day. So, I mean, that wasn't a bad trade. But the thing is, I kept a lot of players that I could have got rid of. For example, Horn Francis had a shocker against Collingwood. He only got 42. And it may have been a time to get rid of him last week. I know he had a good score, so it wasn't like I was going to, but that could have been something I could have done. And also in the midfield, Jordan DeGoey played a lot more forward time against Port Adelaide as well, which I am not too impressed by. But like we also said, talking about the Bulldogs and the midfield, Jackson McRae only got 73. Bontempelli got an okay score. He got 92. And I had him as captain. So the thing is, he was my best scoring midfielder last week, Marcus Bontempelli, which is not good enough. Like, when you think about the top midfielders in this last week, with Laird 142, 2. We had Brayshaw, who got about 140, 130. Clayton Oliver got 149. We had Merritt, who scored 100. Mills, who scored 100. Miller, who scored 100. Jack Steele, who scored 100. Dunkley, as a forward, scored 100. Darcy Parish scored 100. Lockie Neal, I think, scored 100 as well. I didn't have any of these guys. My best mid scorer was 92. So that's why my score... To be honest, if I had a decent midfielder, I could have should have got 2,000.
Yeah.
But my trades for this week, I got rid of Jason Horne-Francis. I couldn't trust him again, honestly. I feel like he had a good round 1, but I don't think he's going to get enough midfield time to score for me. And I got Jack Zeeble. I think he's a really popular pick this season because he's gone back to that role that he had in 2021, I think it was.
Yeah.
When he played defence. He's like their first choice defend. He's like the quarterback, really. When Harry Sheezer wasn't getting the ball. Honestly, could be a captain's pick this week, Harry Sheezer. I'm not going to do it. I'm not that ballsy, but honestly is. But yeah, I got Jack Zeeble this week, and I got rid of Jordan De Goey. Like I said, in round 1 he was playing midfield, but late in that game in round 1 he actually went forward and kind of not won the game for them against Geelong, but he had a couple of moments, and it looks like in round 2 he's going to be playing a lot more forward time. It looks like they're going to be trusting Nick Dacos to play on that wing to midfield, Josh Dacos as well. It looks like Jordan De Goey is going to go forward, which is, I think, a good thing for Collingwood, but not for AFL Fantasy. And I've gone and picked Setterfield because he's had 2 really good starts. He looks like he's going to be he's going to be in a lot of centre bounces because he plays a little bit more a defensive midfielder than a attacking midfielder, so I think that's what they need in there. And plus, he's averaged over 120 so far this year. He's got 100 and... What's his rate? Yeah, he's got 130 and 122. So, as a midfielder who's actually a lower price than De Goey, I felt that was a good idea. But that's my team for this week. My current rank is 3,097, so I was 114 in round 1. So that's right down. But hopefully this week, hopefully Sean Darcy picks up his game. That's my problem. He got 61, and I think he was lucky to get that score. He was like 36 at 3/4 time. So I'm happy that he got to 61 in the end, but I should have picked Jared Witts or Riley O'Brien. I don't know why I picked him. That was a stupid decision. But yeah, because in round 1, I think they scored so many points against St Kilda. St Kilda linked a lot of points. But this week, I feel like I'm going to have to pick... Soon I'm going to have to... I have to wait for these these reserves to start scoring more and get more higher price, because once they do, I'm going to start trading out these 4 midfielders down the bottom. Will Ashcroft scored 90, but Callahan's in trouble. Mackenzie could honestly be dropped soon because I think Hawthorn are going to start ringing in changes. Warple was okay, so I think he's safe for now. But yeah, and also McRae, he hasn't scored 100 yet. I know he scored 100 in round 1. But Bontempelli hasn't scored 100 yet, and I thought that he was going to have a year to challenge for a Brownlow, and he's had 2 pretty poor games. Tom Green was tired, so I'm okay with him. But my midfield's my biggest problem right now. My forward line's, I think, set for almost the season if Sheezel keeps it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, my defence needs a little bit of work. But if anyone's thinking of picking a player like point of difference, I think in a cheap option in defence, I think you should be getting Liam Stocker.
I don't know why people weren't at the start of the season. Everyone was saying when he was at Carlton, he should be put in that team. And then they delisted him, obviously. They didn't want him. I think he was the obvious pick in fantasy this season, and no one picked him now.
What's his owned? He's still only 1.6 owned at the moment. At the start of the season, he was 0.4, I think it was. He was so low, and he's averaging 89. As a player that's that price. I mean, if you look at Constable, who's 100 lower, he's got a better average than Constable.
Yeah.
So if you guys need a defender who's under 550, I believe, what's he priced at? 512. That's so low. If you guys want a point of difference, I'd be getting Liam Stocker because he's getting a lot of like kickback disposals like a Sam Doherty would get.
Yeah.
So yeah, my captain for this week is going to be Tom Green up against Carlton. I think he'll have a good game. Carlton don't tend to tag. I don't know if Ed Kerno's tagging much this season. No. So I feel like Tom Green will have an okay game there. Will Setterfield is another option up against the Saints. But again, I feel like Winhager, he did come as a sub last week. And the defensive pressure of St Kilda so far, I don't know if I can pick Setterfield. I don't trust him just yet. Nick Dacos is an option up against Richmond because they won't tag.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of options there. Harry Sheezel's probably my best option at the moment. What the hell has happened with this kid? He's had a great start. But yeah, that's all the AFL fantasy stuff. What did you do for your trades?
Oh, I don't bloody remember. I think it was... Give me a sec. I know I got rid of... I know I got Zeeble. I know that. We got... So mine were... I got Will Day for Isaac Cumming, and I got Zeeble for Sam Flanders.
Yeah. Okay, so that's fair enough. I think a lot of people picked Sam Flanders so far.
Well, no, they didn't. They actually...
No, maybe they avoided
hardly
it.
Anyone did. He was like this. Yeah, they were. He was the point of difference that everyone thought in pre-season he was actually going to score, but he just didn't.
He didn't score
because like Miller, Rao, Noah Anderson didn't play all the
Rao's had a good start, hasn't he?
Yeah, all the pre-season games that he was.
What's Rao on? He got 102. He got 95 and 109. That's pretty good. I mean, he's 717 though.
Yeah, because
if you got that price, you're getting Will Setterfield.
Yeah, because he didn't play. None of those big three played all of the games. Flanders played midfield, and
he's not playing there now.
Yeah, now he's not playing there. He did play well in the second quarter, I reckon it was, but yeah, he got 30 points in the third quarter, in the second quarter, but he just went from 56 at half time to I think 60, and that was it for the end of the game. It was horrible.
Yeah. Alright, well, now onto our last thing. I've got a hot take. I kind of did one last week with David King about, I don't know if you saw that, how David King...
The concussion. You don't even have to tell me. Of course I know. That's all he talks about.
Yeah, but did you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that he came out and said, that was a smart decision by Luke Shuey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're not getting on top of that one. I'm still annoyed about the elimination final years ago.
That's a while ago now.
Yes.
What I wanted to say was the biggest, I think, a hot take is the fact that I think, even though it's round 2 this season, I think the Bulldogs could be one of the biggest teasers we've seen since St Kilda in the early 2010s to late 2000s. I think St Kilda back then, if you guys don't know, St Kilda were probably I think they probably had the best team on paper to win the premiership. They had a killer forward line with Nick Rewalt, Justin Kaczynski. They had probably the best midfield, I believe, with Brendan Goddard, Wingman and Dalsano, Graham. They had Lenny Hayes, of course, Lloyd Montagna, and they had a pretty good defence as well.
Yeah.
Who was it?
Sam Fisher.
Not Liam Baker. Stephen Baker, that's the one. They also had Stephen Milne as well. But they had a really, really good team.
Yeah.
And I think the Bulldogs have that sort of list. They have a really, really good forward line. They've got two-pronged forward. They've got Jamara Ugle-Hagan and Aaron Norton. I know Jamara Ugle-Hagan's still quite young, so you can give him a bit of time. But I feel like if Luke Beveridge is their coach, these teams is not going to take the next step to a premiership. He doesn't have the game plan to win them a premier. He doesn't give them enough motivation to play defensively. I don't know what it is, but their midfielders on paper should be. I mean, Jackson McRae and Bontempelli honestly could be Brownlows. I mean, they've got so many Brownlow votes in the past that they could have won a Brownlow by now. They could win one early in the future, but I feel like they could be the biggest tease to have seen in the last 10, 15 years. They will be if they don't. I think either move on Luke Beveridge or he has to somehow find some sort of inspiration to get them to play a defensive game.
Yeah.
Because even then, St Kilda back then was still quite a good on defensive side as their midfielders. They probably just weren't attacking enough.
Yeah, that was their problem. They couldn't attack.
This is the opposite on that side. I think they've got the same sort of list. Their defence probably isn't as noteworthy like the Bulldogs, but their forward line and their midfield are very similar on the fact that they're both Brendan Goddard, Nick Dalsano, those guys were probably... I don't know if Nick Dalsano was more Brownlow, but definitely Brendan Goddard.
Yeah.
Was definitely one of the best midfielders of the time. And in the forward line, Justin Kaczynski and Nick Rewalt, probably one of the best two forward line combinations we've seen. And I think Ugle-Hagan and Norton could be that. But they don't get enough good service from the midfield because all it is just bombing it forward and they miss the mark or
they're just looking for disposals, the midfield. They're just looking for stats.
Yeah, how many times Jackson McRae will get the ball and instead of actually waiting for an option to give a handball to, he'll just throw it out of the way because that's what they do. But yeah, I feel like, honestly, the Bulldogs are probably going to be one of the biggest teasers since the St Kilda team of the early 2010s if they don't lose Luke Beveridge.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, that is my hot take for this week. Make sure to go check out Jackpot Junkies for every single multi for every single game. He got a couple last week.
Yeah.
We got a lot last week. Missed out one by one kick. So he does have some sort of idea of what he's doing.
I got 3 of 9 last week, so I did pretty well.
Is that good? Is it?
All right. But I also did what?
The third.
Yeah. Well, all right. I also did a 20 to 200 challenge. So you put $20 in. You start off with it, and you just do a couple single bets to get it to 200. I did that the first 2 weeks of the season and got it. So.
And people can join in on that.
Yeah, people can join on that. Yeah, but if you just go to my Instagram page and you can find all the information there. For it. So yeah, there'll be stuff like that. I post my tips for the multi at the start of the week. That hasn't gone well because my tipping has been pathetic. But
you don't pick teams to win, do you?
Yeah, that's I do one of those multis a week to win. That doesn't go well, but yeah. And
the other multis do. If you guys want to follow more,
the multis are the same game. Multis are pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
I give an explanation.
When I read the one that you were talking about, then I feel like that's pretty good. With all that sort of stuff. So yeah, if you guys want to follow more about the multis for the AFL this year, then make sure you check out Jackpot Junkies. If you're going to gamble, obviously gamble responsibly. If you are liking the podcast, make sure to let us know because it's only a really small channel at this stage, but we want to grow it. So just let us know what you would like to see for the podcast or the channel in general. As I said, the live stream this week will be Collingwood v Richmond on Friday night, so make sure to check that one out. Make sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Subscribe on this channel as well. All the links are below or on the screen as you can see. Thanks for watching, but that's all from us, so we'll catch you all later.